Well, hello, I'm John Welty. I'm here with David Daw and Mike Bailey, and welcome to Shop Talks with Mestek Machinery. Today we're going to be talking about workflow. And so I've been out on a lot of installs with coil lines, around the country, and I've noticed that there's a variety of different ways that people have their shops arranged, where the coils are coming in, where the product's coming out, and just how all of these things are being handled together as just in general. And I see a wide variety of that. What do you guys see happening as a trend in the industry when it comes to workflow, and what drives those changes?
What's shocking to me is I can remember, and I still have this magazine through Snips. I think back in the 70s, I think the gentleman's name was Gary Budzik, maybe.
Yeah,
he
wow,
wrote
his name from the past.
Yeah, he wrote an article about shop layout, and which lends itself to workflow. And some of those same principles today are still applied. We do see a lot more of the contractors actually paying attention to the workflow and shop layout. I think the Henry Ford methodology, every step is a dollar, that has caught on with the contractors. You're seeing contractors today become more manufacturer-minded. I don't think they were. Some were, some weren't, but more and more are becoming manufacturer-minded. So a lot of that comes into play when it comes to safety and material flow, and where the raw materials are coming in and the finished goods are going out. But I think at the end of the day, there's a lot more competition, and these contractors are trying to find a way to gain an edge when it comes to the labor side of things and the cost of manufacture.
Interesting. So what do you see about any of these things going on with you as far as safety, or is this just purely about labor reduction?
Well, the biggest area I've seen is the handling of fittings, coming off well, you put it through a beating machine in Pittsburgh, and then your roll, if it's a rolled out flange, and the problems that develops because the laser or plasma machine is cutting those parts out all on the same job. You've got 24 gauge sheet, and it could be going in 3-4 different jobs. So bringing those through a beating machine, Pittsburgh lock, TDC, TDF machine, and then to either lining, another branch that goes over to a hand spray and lining and pinning station. Then they all got to marry back up together again at a knock-up table somewhere with 3-4 guys or women just knocking it together, and then shrink wrapping or film wrapping it then onto a cage. And I see that there's a problem there that the industry hasn't solved yet. It's a couple of people, General Sheet Metal out of Portland recently, when I was there, had a sorting process for the lining side. So when they cut their liner, they would put them in vertical rolling tables to help sort the lining out of it. So this is an issue that is really not completely solved yet.
Well, I think we talked about that a little bit once before. So you get into, there's an inventory control issue that's taking place with all these pieces that have to come back together to form a job. So I imagine part of this workflow, there's probably different philosophies as to whether or not you are maximizing for reduced coil changes as they go from different gauges, or doing all of your installation at one time, or that type of thing, versus focusing on one job so that you don't have to split up a job into all these different pieces and then bring it all back together. How do you see people? Is there one philosophy prevailing over the other, or does that just kind of just up to the shop?
It's probably twofold. It's labor and material costs.
Yeah.
If I can take, and this is a contractor speaking, if I can take 2 or 3 jobs and I can input 2 or 3 jobs and optimize the material, then I'm saving material, which then would save me on the labor side as well, but I'm saving cost of material.
Because you have all the setup and any tooling changes that have to be made, and that sort of stuff. You're reducing how often you have to do that.
Sure, and I think a lot of shops are starting to say, let's cut out the variables. Instead of doing snap lock in large Pittsburgh, let's just make it all large Pittsburgh. Let's cut the inventory down. Let's create an atmosphere with less chance of risk or less chance of human error. So we're starting to see a lot more consolidation into that area too.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before, as we've sat and talked before. Software's giving these guys the opportunities to do what talking about here today, to input, to produce greater input, all right, less chance of human error. It's been driven from the software side, and what we're talking about here today, the CAM software is definitely an asset when it comes to workflow and how that's done. What I'm understanding from the owners is where they're making their money in the shop is the duct line, straight duct.
Yeah.
It's impossible to make money in that department called the fitting producers because you're waiting on the plasma. You got offsets, less than 90s, more than 90s. You got splitter vanes, you got screws, you got gaskets, corners. It's just a lot of
And
variables.
tremendous labor.
Yeah, tremendous labor.
And you got to move all these parts around
Yeah.
too.
So why not cut out some liability in that area? With cornermatic machines and corner insertion machines, and maybe set up some kind of conveyor type style table where each worker has his own job. One guy's doing sealer, one guy's doing screws, one guy's doing splitter vanes, and the guy's doing the cornering. So we're starting to see more of that in the industry too.
Yeah. There's a couple of guys that have done a pretty good job on integrating conveyor systems into that, but it hasn't really taken on, and maybe because people just haven't looked at all of it. And one of the other problems you see is there's two really types of fittings.
Yeah,
that
the
you
variety of shapes.
You've got the sizes, you've got the small parts,
Yeah.
where, again, the more and more the rolled on flange or construction goes on the smaller ductwork, you have a lot of small parts. And it gets to the point, well, what's a small part versus a big part? Because if you get a really big elbow, you don't put it up on a table, you don't put it in a conveyor belt. So there's really two divisions within the fittings, where you have a large duct that has to really go down to the floor, and other ones that can go onto a conveyor table. So that really hasn't been sorted out yet, but I think it's coming.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a solution coming down that road. Because there are machines out there that assist that, but the flow is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were talking about the software perspective, Mike, and through the CAM, I guess what you're talking about is how they are able to feed one system and have it distribute information out to all of the different products that are actually involved in making all of those components.
Yeah.
And then labeling those parts and helping them to manage that inventory and that labor throughout the process.
Yeah, we have what we call tracking now.
Okay.
So if that's enabled in your CAM software, the tracking part of your software, when those labels are printing, they're going to print either a QR code, which that's what today's going to be. It used to be a barcode, now it's a QR code. So now I can track that part through the shop as it's being manufactured onto the truck, and then produce the shipping list, right? Because I've loaded it on the truck. And as I've gotten to the job site, when the gentleman takes delivery, if he thinks he's missing a part, well, if it's on the shipping list, it's on the job site. But to be able to manage that workflow through the shop with QR codes, it's becoming more of a big deal to the contractors as well.
Yeah,
It's a checkoff measure, right?
And so you see that software is continuing to evolve, or are there? Is there a standard system that people are getting into, or is everybody still kind of moving that forward?
Well, I know, speaking of our company, we're putting R&D dollars into it, right?
Yeah.
And there's some, I think, are probably just saying that this is what it is, right? But we are looking at it from the angle of the contractor. What do you need? We're constantly fishing from the contractor. What do you need?
Yeah.
And you take the top 100 of needs, and you call them down to 10, and you start to work on them.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for quite a while now. So the tracking for the parts in the shop, coming off the plasma cutter with the barcodes or the QR codes, it's just one more leg of that R&D work that's been done to, again, let's take the human element out of it. And I think that's what the contractors are asking for more and more and more. Labor is harder and harder to find, especially skilled.
I don't think there's really a one answer yet on this, particularly on the fitting side. But I think that's going to evolve in time. And I think software is going to drive it too. So.
Yeah, well, it's good to see. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity there to help address some of those problems. Mm-hmm. Like you said, that we've talked about that before. That there's the HVAC industry sometimes seems to be something that maybe young people aren't aware of, that it exists. They're not aware of the job opportunities that are out there. I think we spoke about that once before. But you see the same thing with software, right? The big money is being poured into advancing social media and all of the various things out there that entertain and amuse. But there's also a need for to be putting that into the industries that are actually making all of the products that we all take for granted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the start of our conversation. These fittings are the same fittings.
Yeah.
They've been around for 100 years, right? Transitions and offsets. So, the only thing that made it quicker was that plasma cutter.
Yeah.
So having to lay things out. But from that downstream, it's almost still the same process as it was in 1970.
Yep.
That's where we see that software and technology has improved the consistency. We've talked before about how controlling the product has helped reduce labor and improve the overall output in the end. And so you see that continue to advance. So the shop floor layout, in order to take advantage of improving a workflow, you definitely have to be able to measure and track. So I can see where that's very important for a shop to be able to add those capabilities as well, giving them ways to visualize. I've noticed I've been out on some shops that have work boards, digital big signs out in the shop, so that at a glance people can see color-coded work as it's flowing through the shop, so that everybody in the shop can be aware. It's almost, from a software perspective, it's almost like a Kanban type of board, so that everybody has eyes on what everybody else is working on. And then also machines go down, there's alerts that pop up so that managers can see it from the office and that sort of stuff. Do you see a lot of that happening these days?
Yeah, but I'd like to think that there's a one size fits all on this area we're talking about, and there isn't. But I think it's going to evolve into more standardization, but it's not there yet.
Yeah.
There is a lot of push toward digital apps.
Yeah.
And I am starting to see that. We have a good partner and contractor in Indianapolis area that's completely rewrote his specifications per se, and it's all in their digital apps. He doesn't see the need to save on paper, but he's gone paperless. I think the comment was made to me that if he wanted to open up in Nashville from Indianapolis, he could do it and never go to Nashville, which is it's neat to see. And what I'm talking about there, the workflow is part of that, but what he can see from his gains, from his estimating, he can estimate a job, then he can cross-check his estimation from the production model, and he can see if he's in the red or he's in the black, if he's in the positive or he's in the negative, based on per hour. So I've been watching that since, David, we took a trip to Australia 7-8 years ago when we first saw this start to take place, and now it's starting to come here in North America as well. So the Pacific Northwest, there's I want to say this the wrong way, but there's a lot of techiness up there. So,
Sure, yeah.
And I've seen a lot of that writing their own apps and their own software to do these type of things, which it feeds right into workflow, right?
Well, that's how innovation has always happened in this industry, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think software is a big push and a big part of the workflow and what can be obtained.
yeah, interesting. Well, it'll be good to see how that evolves. Is there anything else when we talk about the labor savings about the shop floor layout that stands out to you that you might want to mention?
I think safety is a big part of it.
Safety.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you got to get these machines spread in such a way where people aren't handling sheet metal.
Okay, so you're reducing the handling, you're improving safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
because
course.
you got so many people in the shop, and it could be a safety measure as well. So setting these machines up, right, in a workflow type model, all while thinking about safety is a big deal as well.
Yeah, so you're reducing that handling. The product itself is sharp. It's got a lot of safety issues to it. So, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, one change I've seen over the past 30 or 40 years is no one wore gloves.
Oh, really?
I mean, really.
Yeah.
It's a system. You got calluses on my hands and all. All the work is today using gloves.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing from the OSHA standpoint too, and safety. But ergonomics is another big part. The contractors are understanding more and more for their workforce. Get these guys up off the floor. Okay, build these models that are on tabletops, right? We don't want them on the knees. We don't want them bending over.
Yeah, I have seen that more and more.
And I think that's a big deal too. And what that does from the labor pool side is elongates their careers. You know? They could work maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 more years versus retiring because they're just wore out.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that plays into it as well. I had one contractor call me one time, and he was talking about the installation of his new line, right? And he said, "Hey, my wife came over on Saturday, and we walked the line, and she walked the line with the operator who had never had one, and he was probably 55 years old. And when he got back in his car with his wife, she said, 'Brandon, we are changing people's lives.'" And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the guy who runs the machine, because now he's got this automation, says he can work probably 10 more years. Where he didn't think he could probably work 3 or 4 more years based on the old manual processes. So there are a lot of tentacles to it, but
Yeah,
that's a very important part.
All right, well, that feels like a pretty good point to wrap up here. Thank you for joining us today with Mestek Machinery Shop Talks. I've been with David Daw and Mike Bailey, and myself, John Welty. Thank you.